all national focal points for periodic reporting across the Asia Pacific region. Colleagues from UNESCO field offices, friends and colleagues from IUCN, and also from the Category 2 Center on World Natural Heritage Management and Training for Asian Pacific region based in Dehradun, India. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all. This is Mr. Feng Jing, Chief of Asia Pacific Unit of the World Heritage Center, speaking from UNESCO headquarters in Paris. Welcome to all, and thank you for attending this training session, the 10th online session organized by the World Heritage Center for the periodical reporting exercise in Asia and the Pacific. Today's session is dedicated to reporting on natural and mixed World Heritage properties, and we'll examine the key thematic issues surrounding natural and mixed World Heritage sites. The Asia-Pacific region has almost 1/3 of natural heritage properties with diversified types of natural sites, ranging from the highest mountains in the world, the Himalaya, represented by Sagarmatha National Park, to the very large marine heritage sites such as Phoenix Islands protected area in Kiribati and the Great Barrier Reef in the Pacific, rainforests in Southeast Asia, and also some deserts and grasslands in Central Asia. We hope that this session can provide you with some new discoveries and a better understanding of conservation and management of natural and mixed World Heritage properties. For today's topic, I'm very pleased to be joined by dear friends and colleagues, in addition to the Asia Pacific periodical reporting team. They are Ms. Catherine Zeszka, representing IUCN, and Dr. Gotan Talkuta, and Mr. Nadia Kakati from the World Natural Heritage Management and Training for Asia Pacific, who stayed at the Wildlife Institute of India, a Category 2 center under the auspices of UNESCO. We are also pleased to have our colleague, Mr. Guy Debonnet, Chief of the Natural Heritage Unit at the World Heritage Center, join us for today's session. At the end of the session, we will open the floor and respond to questions from the participants in this morning's session. All presenters and the representatives from the World Heritage Center, IUCN, and WI will answer any queries you may have about reporting on natural heritage. As in previous weeks, this session will be recorded, and the video and the presentations shared with you after the session. As this topic is especially relevant to site managers of natural and mixed properties, we have invited the national focal points to extend the invitation to site managers in their respective countries. As before, we strongly encourage you to share the recording and the training materials with site managers after sessions as well. Let me take this opportunity to express again our thanks to the Republic of Korea, whose support through their funding trust arrangement with the World Heritage Center makes these training sessions and the close follow-up of the periodical reporting exercise possible. Finally, I would like to remind all of you that periodical reporting is meant as a state party-driven process. In this spirit, we continue to strongly encourage that you organize national workshops with the World Heritage Site managers in your respective countries. Of course, with full consideration given to the current health situation. Feel free to reuse any of the training materials that we shared with you this year, translate them and disseminate them among all the stakeholders concerned with the periodical reporting exercise. I will now pass the floor to my colleague from the World Heritage Center, Mr. Michel Vine, who will provide an update on progress with the questionnaire so far and address a few logistic and practical questions. Michel, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Feng. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone. In terms of updates for filling in the questionnaire, as you are all aware, we have sent the update of all percentage completion for each one of the state parties in the Asia-Pacific region. This, of course, is to ensure and encourage that everyone is on track and on the same page. For national focal points, you can, of course, check the percentage completion at any time as you have access to both sections 1 and sections 2 of the questionnaire. Any issues or any concerns that you would like to have addressed, of course, can be sent to wh-periodicreporting@unesco.org. We should also emphasize that since we are going to be many of us will be beginning our holidays very soon. If there are any issues within the next 2 weeks, we may have a delayed response in addressing these concerns. So if anything, you can send us these emails and we'll address them once somebody is able to access the periodic reporting questionnaire email. Otherwise, we can expect that everybody will be back in full force by January 4th, and we'll be able to address concerns then. So we can also say that if there are any other concerns beyond natural heritage, and if time permits, please go ahead and type your questions into the chat, and we can either address them here in today's meeting or via email afterwards. I think with this, I will pass the floor to my colleague Akane Nakamura from the Asia-Pacific unit here at the World Heritage Center to begin today's proceedings. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today on the session for the natural and mixed heritage. Let me share my screen. Okay. Do you see my screen?
Yes, but it is not full screen.
Oh. Okay. Oh, sorry.
That's better. We can still see Teams within.
Okay. Is this okay?
I think go ahead from there. It should work okay. Otherwise, it'll take a little bit of time to get it much bigger.
Okay, so I start. So today my colleague Cassie from IUCN and I will cover some of the key thematic topics, especially relevant to the natural and mixed World Heritage properties in Asia and the Pacific region, including recent trend and also in relation to the state parties' obligations as specified in the operational guidelines for the implementation of the World Heritage Convention and also the World Heritage Committee decisions. And Cassie will provide with some case studies. Today's session is more than guiding you through the questionnaire, but we hope this can provide you with some deeper insights into the convention. So to start, I would like to give you a quick overview of the natural and mixed World Heritage properties around the world and also in the Asia and the Pacific regions. So to date, 252 World Heritage properties are inscribed for their natural outstanding universal value, which include 213 natural properties and 13 mixed properties, which are inscribed for both natural and cultural outstanding universal value. So this covers approximately 360 million hectares of land and sea in all the world's major ecosystems. So this represents 7% of all the terrestrial protected areas and 8% of all marine protected areas. So as you know, Asian Pacific region is very diverse and encompasses a wide range of climates, landscapes, and ecosystems. And the region hosts almost 1/3 of the natural and mixed World Heritage properties. So APA, in total, we have 264 properties, of which 67 are natural properties located in 22 states parties, which also includes 3 transboundary properties, and 12 properties are mixed sites located in 6 states parties. And here you see a map of all the natural and mixed heritage properties around the world, and you can find more details. There's a dedicated website on Natural World Heritage Property, and you can find the link here. Okay, so just I want to quickly touch upon the second cycle of periodic reporting in APA region. So the reporting was done between 2010 and 2011, and it was the results was presented at the 36th session of the World Heritage Committee in 2012. So for the second cycle, reporting was done by 41 states parties for section 1. And for section 2, for natural and mixed properties, in total 60 properties reported for the second cycle. So for those sites inscribed between 1978 and 2010. So for those properties reported for the second cycle, the reports are available on the World Heritage Center's website, but for some countries, the access is restricted. So in case you cannot access your reports online, please contact us at WHC so that we can share the report with you. And also some of the information reported for the second cycle has been already pre-filled for the third cycle questionnaires. And so for 60 natural and mixed sites, 3 mixed sites inscribed between 2011 and 2019, a new addition for the third cycle. And you can have all these results in this publication. So please also have a look later. So now just in terms of the questionnaire format, there are no questions, just dedicated for natural and mixed properties. But some sections, some chapters are more relevant for nature. For instance, the one that you are seeing now, it's from the chapter 2 on synergies with other biodiversity-related conventions. So this concerns more for nature, natural heritage. So this, yes, including also UNESCO programs of Man and Biosphere Reserve and also UNESCO Geoparks. And so here, just this is a recap from the previous session on synergies, and you can find some more relevant questions for natural sites, both in section 1 and section 2. And in terms of the types of the questions, for section 1, some of the questions require separate response for cultural and natural heritage, as you can see here. And for section 2, site managers are expected to answer all the questions regardless of the category of the property. And here I want to make a remark that for transboundary properties, so for natural sites, it applies to, so we have 3 transboundary properties. One is Western Tian Shan, shared by Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Uzbekistan, and also 2 natural sites of Urus-Nu Basin and landscapes of Dauria shared by Mongolia and Russian Federation. So for these three transboundary properties, please make sure that site managers concerned closely communicate each other to fill in the questionnaire, because only one state party, only one site managers has been given access to fill out the questions for the one transboundary property. So now I would like to move on to the factors affecting the property, which concern the section 2, chapter 4. So this was covered in the last session. So as you see here, there are 14 primary factors affecting the property. And so each for site managers in section 2, you are asked to go through each factors with how to explain how it's been affecting your properties. And just so this is extract of the results from the second cycle of periodic reporting in the upper region. So as you see, so all the factors are affecting both cultural and natural properties in one way or another. So it's not just either natural sites or cultural sites, but it's affecting the properties in different ways, also both in negative and positive manners. But some of the factors are more prominent for natural sites, such as invasive alien species and also the extraction of biological resources. So here we have reviewed some recent trends, especially from the reactive monitoring, and we identified 8 topics which we thought increasingly relevant for natural and mixed properties in upper region. So here there are 8. So climate change, invasive alien species, tourism, pollution, illegal resource use, infrastructure development, mining, and finally management and governance. So now I will run through these 8 topics in relation to the obligations and the convention, and Cassie will provide some case studies. So first, climate change. So the issue of climate change, the impact of climate change on natural and cultural World Heritage properties was brought to the attention of the World Heritage Committee in 2005. And in 2007, the committee adopted the policy document on the impacts of climate change on World Heritage properties, as you see here. And so since the adoption of the policy document in 2007, numerous reports on the state of conservation of World Heritage properties located in all regions were presented to the committee in relation to climate change impact. So being aware that knowledge related to adaptation and mitigation to climate change has drastically increased over the past 10 years, the World Heritage Committee at its 40th session requested that the World Heritage Center and advisory bodies to periodically review and update the policy documents so as to make available the most current knowledge and technology on the subject to guide the decisions and actions of the World Heritage Committee. So here you see the committee decisions from its 40th session in 2016. And also there are, so in every committee, so the topic of climate change is discussed, and also the committee supports the ambitious implementation of the Paris Agreement, as you can see here. So since this climate change policy is also, there are relevant questions in the third cycle of periodic reporting, and this is a kind of hot topic for the World Heritage field right now. So just I want to give a brief overview of the updating. So this climate change document has been currently under update. So I just want to provide some quick overview of this updating of the climate change policy document. So following this committee decision in 2016, in 2019, an international technical advisory group of experts was established with the main objectives to review a draft updated policy document and provide inputs. So this technical advisory group has met several times online to address the potential different viewpoints or approaches and to provide further guidance. Also, as part of the updating process, the World Heritage Center had also launched a wide online consultation of all stakeholders of the World Heritage Conventions, including state parties, site managers, local communities, indigenous peoples, academics, NGOs, civil societies. So you may have also been consulted during this process, and over 360 contributions were submitted. And zero draft was circulated to all the state parties in March 2020. And this final draft will be examined by the World Heritage Committee at its extended 44th session in June and July 2021. So please keep an eye on this important process, and more details, information can be found here through this link. So here I'd like to also draw your attention to policy document for the integration of a sustainable development perspective into the processes of the World Heritage Convention, which was adopted by the General Assembly in 2015. So this this policy document also there are relevant questions in the periodic reporting. And here, this policy document also highlights the importance of strengthening resilience to natural hazards and climate change. And here, so you can find also this document is a key for the implementation of the World Heritage Convention, and this can be found through this link. And this is for your reference. The World Heritage Marine Program also have various initiatives related to climate change, and which are all you can see. You can find out more through this link on the Marine World Heritage site. And these are just for your reference. There are a number of publications related to climate change and also disaster risk reduction. And all these publications are also available through this the web page on climate change. So now I move on to the second topic on invasive alien species. So this has been also a significant threat for many natural and mixed heritage properties. And this is also very much linked to the increasing impact of climate change. So here you can see this table this is the results from the second cycle periodic reporting. And you can see that all the regions, especially the Pacific, has been severely affected by the impact of invasive alien species. So now, so the third is tourism. So as you can see here, this is also the extract from the second cycle of periodic reporting. So tourism has both negative and positive impact on the outstanding universal value of the World Heritage property. So it can have some positive impact, especially through the revenue raised from tourism activities for local communities. But at the same time, if it's not undertaken in a sustainable manner, it can pose some negative impacts on the World Heritage sites. So here I just, there's also relevant, so useful materials on the web page of Sustainable Tourism Program. The link is given here, so which include relevant publications, and also there is a link to UNESCO World Heritage Sustainable Tourism Toolkit, which is also mentioned in the third cycle of periodic reporting. So please visit to find out more. So the fourth is pollution. This has been also a serious issue. And here, as you can see here, and all the regions has been affected. So especially for South Asia, almost 30% of the properties, natural properties, was were affected by pollution. And so this is just highlighting some recent initiatives. So World Heritage Center, together with other partners, also mobilizing some support to raise issues, especially related to marine debris or marine litters. And some information are also available for you through this link. So the fifth factors affecting the natural heritage in Asia-Pacific region. It's illegal resource use, including poaching and logging, have been also severely affecting our properties. And here you see that, yes, many regions except Northeast Asia, so South and Southeast Pacific, they have been impacted by this illegal resource use. And World Heritage Center also cooperating with CITES, the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species of Wild Fauna and Flora, to address this issue. And next is infrastructure development, including roads and dams. And so this has been really affecting many properties in Asia and the Pacific region at the moment. It's not just natural sites, but also cultural sites. So here I would like to highlight these important paragraphs from the operational guidelines, which basically requesting the state parties that to inform the committee their intention to undertake or authorize in an area protected under the convention of major restorations or new constructions which may affect the OUV of the property. So it's important to emphasize here that notice has to be given as soon as possible and before making any decisions that would be difficult to reverse. So this has been coming up for a number of, yes, we have been observing this for many properties, not just in Asia Pacific region, but also globally. And there are World Heritage Committee adopted specific decisions, including dams. So the committees, the World Heritage Committee consider that the construction of dams with large reservoir within the boundaries of the World Heritage properties is incompatible with their World Heritage status. So this is really important to remember that committee adopted this decision. And also state parties have an obligation to ensure that impact from dam that could affect properties located upstream or also downstream within the same river basin are rigorously assessed in order to avoid impacts on the OUV. And also there are a number of decisions related to impact assessments. So, and also we are observing many large-scale development projects in recent years. So now it is getting more important to have these strategic impact assessments to see not just impact of a single development project, but also indirect, but also cumulative impacts, which was coming from multiple development projects. So here there are specific guidance regarding impact assessments in the operational guidelines. And here, this is so here, just read out. So the state parties have obligation to ensure that environmental impact assessment, heritage impact assessment, and or strategic environmental assessment to be carried out as a prerequisite for development projects and activities that are planned for implementation within or around the World Heritage property. So it's not just within the World Heritage property, within the boundary, but it's also important to consider outside of the property, the impact coming from outside, because especially integrity is a very important element for the protection of the World Heritage properties, for natural sites especially. So even things are happening outside the properties, it can impact the properties. So it's really important to consider this in a wider setting. And there are also a number of relevant committee decisions, including these listed here. And especially the committee requests that the impact assessments for natural properties are conducted in line with IUCN's World Heritage Advisory Note on environmental assessment, which Cassie will share with you later. And also that the impact assessment should include a specific assessment of the impact on the OUV of the World Heritage property. So these are very important part. And also, so mining is another threat that is affecting many World Heritage properties. And in 1998, due to growing concern, World Heritage Center and advisory bodies started discussing the issue of extractive industries and their impact on protected areas and other ecologically sensitive sites with the International Council of Metals and the Environment. And committee also adopted a number of decisions related to extractive industries, and including the respect of no-go commitment that that extractive activities within World Heritage properties are not allowed. So this is that adopted by the committee. So it's important to note that no mining activities are allowed within the World Heritage property. And more information, including the no-go commitment, can be found in this dedicated web page on World Heritage and extractive industries. So last but not least, management and governance is important factors affecting the properties, both positively and negatively. And here you can see that, so if management activities are undertaken in an appropriate manner, it brings a lot of positive impacts on the World Heritage properties. So here you see the result from the second cycle. And there are also a number of publications and resource manuals available in relation to this management and governance in natural World Heritage properties, including these three publications. Okay. So here, yes, and the operational guidelines promote that participatory conservation joined by different stakeholders, and now we have more increasingly attention to the importance of participation by local communities and indigenous peoples. So there are a number of paragraphs in the operational guidelines which talk about this, that biological diversity and cultural diversity can be closely linked and interdependent and human activities. And here you see the emblem of the World Heritage Convention, and this emblem actually symbolizes the interdependence of cultural and natural properties. This central square is a form created by humans, and this circle around represents nature. So it really shows that nature and culture are both intimately linked. And also operational guidelines recognize the importance of participation of communities and indigenous people, including indigenous peoples, and also that respect traditional and indigenous knowledge. Here you can see some relevant publications. So UNESCO adopted a policy on engaging with indigenous people in 2018. So this is a key document to refer to. And there's also relevant website, dedicated website on World Heritage and Indigenous People, and which can be accessible through this link. And this just photo. This is a photo from East Renel, Solomon Island. This is the first natural site being managed by indigenous people, so it's under customary management. So this boy holding these medicinal plants, so this is widely utilized by the communities. So it's important that although some natural heritage properties pristine, they are located out far from human habitats, but many natural and mixed World Heritage properties, there are local communities living within or outside. So, and it's important that also we respect their traditional practices. So finally, I want to just mention this initiative called Community Management of Protected Areas Conservation, called Compact, which was launched in year 2000, and in a partnership between the World Heritage Center and the UNDP GEF Small Grants Program. So this actually initiative promotes the community-based resource management and to achieve both biodiversity conservation and also sustainable development. And some pilot studies has been conducted mostly in Africa, but also there are some pilot study conducted in the Philippines, but we are now hoping to expand this community-based conservation initiative more to Asia and Pacific region. So we really look forward to also collaborate with national focal points and site managers in this regard. So thank you very much. And now I hand over to Kathy for case studies. Thank you. Kathy?
Good morning. Can you see the presentation?
Go ahead and full screen.
Okay.
It should work. I just want to. Yes, it's all set.
It's just loading.
It'll reset, but it should work.
Okay, we will skip ahead. So one moment, I'll just get back to, too far. Excellent. Okay. Good morning, everyone in Paris, and good afternoon and good evening to everybody in the APA region. It's great to see many of you still on the call this late in the year. So hello to all the site managers and national focal points and our colleagues from the other advisory bodies and also from different centres. So as Akane said, what I'm going to do now is introduce some case studies around these topics that we thought were the most important that have come out of the reactive monitoring process over the last year. So to introduce myself, for those who don't know me, I'm Kathy Zischka. I work with the IUCN World Heritage Program in Switzerland, and I coordinate our monitoring and conservation work. So I'll introduce some of these case studies for you now. So what I'd really like to introduce and start with is the new IUCN World Heritage Outlook 3. So many of you will know the first two versions of this report, so versions 1 and 2, which we carried out in 2014 and 2017. And now we have just in the last weeks released the third edition of the World Heritage Outlook. And so what Outlook is a global assessment of the potential of natural World Heritage sites to conserve their World Heritage values over time. So it's a snapshot looking at the state of conservation, what are the threats to particular World Heritage properties. And so this is a great opportunity to show you some of these also for the region. So these are two maps that I've drawn out of the report for Asia and Oceania, so for the Asia Pacific region. And you can see here in the colors, we have this scale down at the bottom here. This is our wonderful tracker that shows the condition of particular properties. So you can see it for the whole region here. And all of this information is available on the Outlook website. Now, overall, we can see that, so this is for all sites, not just for the APA region. We can see that World Heritage values are still relatively well conserved. So you can see the large majority of sites have either a good condition or of low concern, but we do still have sites that are of high concern and critical. And when you look specifically at those inscribed under biodiversity criteria, so 9 and 10, you can see these are more affected. So you can see in those bars, we have the 4 natural criteria. And if you look at the bottom 2, which are 9 and 10, you can see that there is more red and orange color, which means we have more areas of critical or high concern. And the reason I want to bring this up is to share with you the overall trends that we've seen around threats, because this then relates directly to some of the key topics that we've introduced here today. So you'll see the existing threats to natural World Heritage sites, they continue to increase. So this bar shows, now it's difficult to read, but you don't need to read all the details. You can access this afterwards if you would like to, and we do encourage you to. So what I'd like to draw out here is that the top 3 threats in 2020, the very top threat that we've seen that has the highest impact and the greatest threat to natural World Heritage is climate change. And many of you will be experiencing this within your own sites that you work in and that you manage and work with site managers on. So I'll go into a little bit more on this in the next slide. The second most common threat is invasive and alien species, as Akane also introduced. And the third is for tourism and visitation related threats. So let's have a look at some of these examples. So the first topic that we looked at that Akane introduced is climate change. So here we have climate change and severe weather events. So as I said, this is the biggest threat to natural World Heritage. Over a third of sites are being impacted by climate change. And these impacts can be a range of different impacts. So it could be fires, it could be cyclones and extreme weather events, it could be flooding, sea level rise. A lot of coral reefs around the world are experiencing coral bleaching. And so to give you an example of these, of the photos on the right-hand side, you can see the top 2 photos. So what I'm going to do is introduce some case studies from different regions around the world to give you some examples of these different topics that we'll cover. And so the top 2 photos are from the island of Socotra, which is an island off the coast of Yemen in the Arab region. And as you can see, this was from a cyclone event a few years ago, where at the top left photo, you can see extreme flooding events. And on the right-hand side, you can see the uprooting of these trees, which are iconic species, which are an important part of the OUV, of the Outstanding Universal Value of that particular World Heritage site. Then we have this over the past years. We've seen, as I said, a lot of coral bleaching in our marine World Heritage sites around the world and continue to do so. And we've seen a lot of extreme fire events over the last year, for example, in Brazil and also in Australia. So these issues do span across many, many regions of the world, and climate change impacts very widely and is not just a localized issue. but is clearly also an issue for the APA region. And this, as Akane introduced, brings us back to the management and how we deal with these. And so it's very important then to also look at disaster risk reduction, the resilience of our particular sites, and to manage in response, to manage effectively in response for the impacts of climate change. So the second one to go back to is invasive alien species. So this was the second highest threat identified in this year's World Heritage Outlook report. So the second highest threat to natural world heritage. And so the impacts of invasive alien species can be around unique species and ecosystems. So World Heritage sites often are the last bastions or of an endangered species, or they support very special endemic species for a particular that are part of the outstanding universal value of the property. An invasive species, if not managed properly, can actually impact on the values themselves. And so this also links back to other issues that we've raised. So also not just within a site, but also from outside a site, where you can see, for example, agricultural pollution. So if there's agriculture very close to a World Heritage property, the runoff from the agriculture can then cause eutrophication. It can cause invasive species to grow, and that can also impact on the OUV of the property. And as I mentioned, visitor management is important in this case. For example, on the right, you can see here island. This is an island ecosystem. So this is a particular example from the Austral Lands and Seas site, which is very remote. And so not specific to this, but to bring you back to the idea that islands, although we think they are isolated environments, this also makes them very sensitive to potential impacts from something from the outside. So an external source, an invasive species or an alien species that can come in and impact a particular property. And you'll see this in different there are different sources and different impacts across different parts of the world. I'd just like to also share the new report that came out just a few months ago. It's a report about IAS in World Heritage sites based on the last World Heritage Outlook. And this study found that out of 119 out of, at the time, 241 natural sites are impacted by invasive and alien species. And so this shows why it is the second highest threat that we found to natural world heritage. However, we've also seen some very positive management programs, so positive management and eradication programs. So the fact that islands are isolated, it might make them more susceptible to invasive species. However, it also means that when you have effective monitoring and management eradication programs, you can then also effectively deal with this particular threat. So the third point that Akane raised is tourism. So tourism, we found, is the third biggest threat to natural world heritage. And tourism is very interesting because this is one of the topics where we see both a very positive and potentially also a very negative impact on OUV. So for example, if you have mass tourism or unsustainable tourism, this can lead to a degradation of the OUV and the values. For example, high visitation. So if we have too many people in a particular World Heritage site, if there's a very sensitive ecosystem, this could be a problem for the ecosystem. Or you could have pressures of new visitor infrastructure development. So if to introduce more tourism, bring more people in, there might be proposals for new infrastructure development for these tourists. And so this this all needs to be very carefully considered and managed. And Akane already mentioned about impact assessments, and I'll bring you back to that a little bit later on in the presentation. So it's important to assess the potential impacts of tourism on World Heritage to ensure that we do protect the outstanding universal value. On the other side, you can see that when tourism is managed sustainably, so when we have sustainable tourism, which is well managed, it can contribute very positively to World Heritage. So whether it's through public awareness programs or conservation programs directly engaging the communities and tourists also. And then one of the most important points is the income that tourism can bring to the site, to the World Heritage site. And so many World Heritage properties too do depend on tourism as a source of income. And this, unfortunately, is also where we've seen a big impact in this past year around major impacts with COVID-19 that for some of you who were on the call very early around, Michelle also mentioned that the many sites have had to shut down. You will all be experiencing this, and with that closure is the loss of income that is generated through tourism and visitation. And I think just to bring back to the UNESCO tourism and COVID program, these are some of the things that are being looked at now as the impacts of this. So to give you an example of a great sustainable tourism initiative that is underway, Akane already mentioned some. This is a project that it's called Sustainable Tourism Capacity Building in 4 African World Heritage Destinations. So this is a project run by the World Heritage Center and the African World Heritage Fund around organizing a series of practical training and workshops in 4 World Heritage sites in Africa, which are listed here. And you'll see when we share the PowerPoint with you, you can link directly into each of these to find out more about some of the programs that are happening. So the 4th topic to come back to is pollution. Now, pollution and World Heritage, this covers a whole range of different sources. So pollution can be a variety of different sources and also how it impacts on the site. So, for example, within a World Heritage site, we could have sources of litter or plastic from either local communities or tourists who are, if this is not well managed. You have sources of sewage that need to be dealt with, fishing gear, for example, and around visitor management to make sure that visitors are appropriately removing their waste and appropriately disposing of it effectively in order to protect the site. So there are many, many different areas of different types of pollution. These are just a couple of examples. So those were examples from within the site. What I'd also like to bring you to is looking beyond the site, and you'll hear this across many of our presentations about making sure that it's not just looking at the protection of what is happening within the site, but also beyond in the wider ecosystem and the wider environment. So if you look beyond the site, we have examples such as marine debris. So it could be, for example, fishing gear. It could be plastic pollution that is being carried across the oceans and is ending up in some very, very remote places. You could also, another source is agricultural runoff. So if you have a look at the photo on the bottom left, the green plants, this is from a site in Senegal, Djoudj, which is facing some pressures from rice agriculture around the boundaries, around the outside of the property, which is then putting pressure on onto the World Heritage property itself. And then, of course, we have large-scale industrial operations in the wider region, such as mine tailings. We'll talk a little bit more about mining in a couple of slides. And, for example, air pollution from industry around within the vicinity of the World Heritage property. So you can see there are lots of different areas and ways to effectively manage this. So to give you a quick case study, what I'd like to introduce is staying with this issue of pollution coming from from the wider ecosystem. So this is looking at marine debris in remote islands. So the top left and the right hand photo, these photos are from Papahanaumokuakea, which is a marine World Heritage site in Hawaii. It's a very remote island group, and you can see here on the left is a baby albatross chick, and then you can see the baby is sitting on the beach, and either side of it we have two big pieces of plastic which has washed up on the particular site. And on the right-hand side is a community initiative where the waste is being taken out of the water in order to protect marine species and to protect the particular environments that they have there. And so the important point I'd like to share is that even very, very remote places can experience the pressures of pollution and pressures and threats from a long way away. So this is an important point to keep in mind. So the next one, illegal resource use. So as Akane introduced, this can be a range of different points as well. And this is where we can see some great synergies across working across the different conventions. So impacts on World Heritage, we can see activities such as illegal logging or poaching, illegal fishing, and international trade in endangered species. So this again might be where there's a very special species within a World Heritage site, which then might be traded internationally. And so this is where we see with CITES, for example, a real opportunity to strengthen conservation and protection for World Heritage through the coordination between these what we call multilateral environmental agreements or MEAs. And also just for those who missed the presentation, we also had a separate session just specifically on synergies across MEAs. So we invite you to look at that as well, and that'll give you a little bit more information. But essentially these pressures of logging or poaching or fishing, these illegal activities, can really cause pressure both on the species, but also on the wider ecological connectivity of, for example, an important ecosystem, which might be part of the OUV. So this comes back to the natural criteria, back to criteria 9 and 10. And so, excuse me, and so what we see here is it could be that the connectivity of, for example, migratory species is lost, or for example, a forest ecosystem, if there's illegal logging, can lose the connectivity, ecological connectivity between important areas. And so this raises the importance of enforcement around clear legislation for what is allowed and what not, the important role also of buffer zones in order and effectively managing activities, not only within the property, but also within the buffer zones and within the wider area beyond. And I already spoke about synergies. So this is just introduce a case study so this is from Africa around the rainforests of the Atsinanana, which is in Madagascar. And what we have seen here is some pressures on the World Heritage Site around the extraction of precious wood species, which are used all around the world for different uses, anything from wider uses to playing guitars. So it impacts a whole range of different areas. So species such as rosewood, palisander, or ebony. And these are also, interestingly, brings us back to CITES. So just over the last years, in recent years, we've seen the strengthening of international trade in these particular endangered species. In particular with these endangered species, and that is also strengthening then protection for World Heritage. So there are many examples of synergies across conventions with World Heritage and other conventions. So invite you, as I said, to go back to our other session. So now let's move on to infrastructure development. So as Akane introduced, this is a range of different issues. So this can be the construction of dams, it could be roads. So for example, a new highway proposal that's proposed to go straight through a World Heritage property. It could be bridges or tunnels. It could be industrial infrastructure, or for example, visitor or tourism facilities. So this covers a range of different infrastructure development. And what is important to look at here is that these can impact on the OUV both from inside the property, if something is proposed to be constructed within the property, but also outside. So for example, if a very big highway is being proposed right next to a World Heritage site, that could also have a potential negative impact on OUV. And so this is once again where we come back to the importance of best practice around assessing potential impacts on OUV and the properties. So looking at environmental assessment, so there are different tools that Akane introduced, and I'll give you a couple of examples afterwards around EIAs, so environmental impact assessment, strategic environmental assessment, and the IUCN World Heritage Advice Note. And I'll give you a few other resources as well that are currently being developed. So let's have a look at a case study for infrastructure development. So one example is around dams and hydropower. So this is not an issue in one particular region. We see this impacting World Heritage sites across the world in various different regions. And so dams and hydropower, this can range, it can really range in the size and the location. So we could have, for example, a very small dam that is supplying a local community near a World Heritage site, or it can be a multi-million litre capacity, a very large dam that's being proposed in another area. So there's a big range of what could be proposed, and the location is also very important, within, around, how far away, and I'll talk a little bit about this now. And so the size and the location can have varying impacts on the property. They can be both direct or indirect impacts. And so, as Akane introduced, we have a very specific policy around World Heritage and dams, that dams with large reservoirs inside properties are incompatible with World Heritage. So if you look at the box on the bottom left underneath the image under the map, this is the one that Akane introduced before, around the construction of dams within World Heritage properties. And so what's very important to look at is the impacts at different scales. So we could have localized impacts of the construction of a dam, for example, habitat destruction from the actual construction. It could be loss of species that are important to OUV. So issues such as that need to be considered. But importantly, we also need to look at the wider indirect and cumulative impacts. So when we look at these, we need to think in the context of the wider ecosystem scale. So what could be impacting potentially from upstream, downstream of a project, but also in, for example, the wider ecosystem. So for example, with dams, it could be the wider river basin that is connected to the particular World Heritage property or particular project proposal. And so once again, this brings us back to making sure that we effectively implement best practice environmental impact assessment tools and principles to ensure that there is no impact from proposed projects on World Heritage and its OUV. So just as an example, I'll show you this map on the top left-hand side. So circled in green is a World Heritage property. On the bottom on the left, circled in orange, is a proposed hydropower project. and you won't be able to see the scale bar, but they are connected by the river, as you can see, and the project is over 500 kilometers away from the World Heritage property. And so, and yet there could be a potential impact on that particular property. So the reason I raise this is just to show you that it's not just what is happening very close to or within a property, but also the ecological connectivity and how projects that are proposed further away can also potentially impact on a World Heritage property and its OUV. And the second point to raise here is not just the indirect impacts or impacts that come from further away, but also cumulative impacts of projects. So for example, if we have a site that is already being impacted by certain pressures and threats, so if we have multiple projects already established around a property, maybe it's experiencing logging or poaching, or there's has insufficient management. So there are multiple pressures that could be on a site. And for example, if we then have multiple developments, we also need to take into account the potential cumulative impacts of having multiple developments on the values and OUV. So the next point to look at is around mining. So as Akane mentioned, the extractives industries and World Heritage, there's been a history around this and looking at the impacts of extractives on World Heritage. So extractive industries can include mining, oil and gas projects, but in this case we'll focus on mining and give you an example there. So I kind of introduced the no-go commitment. And as you said, this is around embracing, so actually I'll just go back. So that we have a strong policy and focus around having no mining activities inside World Heritage sites. And if you look at the box on the bottom left, this is once again around decisions and policies that have been adopted around World Heritage that extractive activities are incompatible with World Heritage. So mining within a World Heritage site is not acceptable. And so what we've seen evolve is that some of the leading companies, so major extractive companies that are working in mining or extractives, have made a no-go commitment. So they've joined this commitment to say that they will not undertake activities within World Heritage sites. And we're seeing new additions and new companies coming on board, and we do hope that more and more companies will follow this principle into the future. So if we have a look at the impact on OUV, once again, it's important to consider not just the direct impacts of, for example, the construction of the mine or extraction of resources from a mine, but also indirect and cumulative impacts on OUV. For example, if we have a site where there are multiple mines within the wider area, what is that impact on the OUV in addition to just a single mine? So yep, once again, around best practice and looking at environmental assessments and using these effectively and very early in the process in order to assess any potential impacts of such projects before any decisions are made. So Akane mentioned this, if you look back at the wording in the decision, it's all about ensuring that these potential impacts are looked at very early on before any decisions are made to progress with a project. And so a case study here, I'd just like to show you because it's a very clear map. This is the proposal for a potential mine in the Monimba area in Guinea. And you can see here on the map, the green area is the World Heritage property. And so this area in yellow and red is not part of the property, and you can see the area in red is a proposal for a potential mine. And so you can see this proposed mining project is very close to a World Heritage Site. And so this is an example where it's very important to clearly look at the potential impacts of potentially having a mine in this area. What would the impacts be on the outstanding universal value? And in order to assess whether this project should go ahead or not. And so I've spoken in the last few slides about ensuring effective impact assessment processes. So just to give you a couple of additional examples around this. So what we're doing as part of our role as advisory bodies and also as a secretariat of the convention, UNESCO, we're looking at best practice impact assessment guidance to support states parties in being able to undertake these decisions. So supporting positive decision making around World Heritage and around these potential developments. So the first many of you, hopefully all of you have seen and are aware of, is the IUCN World Heritage Advice Note on Environmental Assessment. And so this outlines the key principles to follow and the steps that need to be taken in terms of assessing potential impacts on outstanding universal value of a property. Around whether a strategic environmental assessment is required at a broader scale or a specific environmental or social impact assessment. And then, of course, we have heritage impact assessments for cultural properties as well. But in this case, we're talking specifically about natural and mixed sites. And so this document then outlines how this should be done in the context of World Heritage. So second point I'd like to raise is the ICRAM IUCN World Heritage Leadership Program. And as part of this program, we're working to develop new World Heritage Impact Assessment guidance materials. So this is currently in development. It's looking at having a broad guidance materials for states parties and developers to be able to effectively look at what is important to take into account when looking at developments and World Heritage. And in this, as part of this program, there were two webinars run very recently. So I've included links to these here on the left. You can see the images there. They are hyperlinked when you get them. And Akane and I have also included links to particular resources for you on the last page of the presentation. So you'll be able to access those. And essentially these two presentations done over the last few months look at, the first one was Impact Assessment for World Heritage 1. What are the main things you need to know? So this is around introducing how impact assessment works, what are the principles, what is important to take into account. And then the second one, Impact Assessment for World Heritage 2, Steps and Processes, is around some of the more specific steps and the processes that need to be undertaken. So we hope that these are also available. So these are available for you, readily available on the ICRAM website for you, and hope that these also support site managers and decision makers in making positive decisions for World Heritage sites. And then the last theme that we've talked about is management and governance. So to come back to World Heritage Outlook, it found that the overall effectiveness of protection and management of natural World Heritage sites still remains of concern. So if you have a look at the infographic at the bottom, you can see in this graph, it's great to see that that half of our World Heritage properties either have highly effective or mostly effective protection and management, and yet we're still seeing some needs for improvement in many World Heritage sites. And so I show this to emphasize the importance of management and governance, because this is what underpins what underpins World Heritage and what is required to really fundamentally protect and conserve our outstanding universal value of our sites. So this can include the legal framework, what laws are in place to protect and conserve. It can be laws around allowing what activities are allowed, managing visitation. And then, of course, the management structures. Are there effective management structures in place for a site? Management plans specific for the World Heritage property. Of course, we spoke before a little bit around financial resources. Every site will need effective financial resources to be able to manage properly. And yeah, you will see that this has been impacted, as I mentioned, over this past year with COVID as well. Human resources, of course, are very important. So the staffing, the capacity and training of human resources within a site are very important and fundamental for protecting and conserving. Then, of course, around research programs and monitoring. So we need to ensure that we effectively look at the values that make up the particular World Heritage site. So there need to be monitoring programs to look at the state of conservation of the values. Are they being effectively managed? Are there areas where we need to strengthen management, and what can be done? And that these sorts of programs then allow managers to effectively be able to respond to threats and to put management processes and measures in place. And the final point just to raise is around site boundaries. So the boundaries of the World Heritage property are, of course, a very important, play a very important role in protecting it. So are these boundaries clear? Does the property have a buffer zone that helps to protect the property? This is a very important part of protecting the World Heritage site. And so just to close, as I mentioned, Akane and I have included some links here to documents that will be helpful to you as well. So we do encourage you to share these further with other site managers or with your colleagues and anyone who might find these useful. And so we are really here as advisory bodies to help support you as states parties around the protection and the management of our wonderful World Heritage sites. So I will stop there. Thank you very much. We'll be available for questions after the next presentation. So I will hand back. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Kathy and Akane, for the in-depth presentation. I will now pass the floor to our colleagues at the Category 2 Center for Natural Heritage in India. I'm not sure if it is going to be either Niraj or Gautam who will be presenting, but I will pass the floor to you.
Thank you, Michelle. We'll just can you see the slide?
We can see it perfectly fine, yes.
Yeah. Okay, so Dr. Gautam will initiate it and then I'll close it. Thank you. Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. I am Gautam Talukdar and I am the in charge Wildlife Institute of India's Category 2 Center here in India. And greetings to all of you. It's a very warm, sunny day here. And I wish to transmit the same sunshine to all of you. So about a little bit about Wildlife Institute of India. It's an autonomous body under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change of Government of India. And its mandate is primarily capacity building through training, education and research in the field of wildlife conservation. And we cater to almost entire Asia Pacific region. In short, all I can say is that it is a one-stop shop for any issues related to wildlife in this particular region. And acknowledging this capability of Wildlife Institute of India, it was proposed to establish a Category 2 center, and the due approval was granted by UNESCO in 2013. And Government of India signed an agreement, and subsequently the Category 2 center was established in Wildlife Institute of India, and it's now called as WIIC2C. And its mission is to strengthen the implementation of the World Heritage Convention in the Asia Pacific region, primarily by building capacity of all stakeholders through training, research, and dissemination of information and network building. So the key activities that we have been carrying out in this center is obviously the most important one being the capacity building workshops. We have held quite a few international workshops with almost around 800 participants from 33 countries, which includes disaster risk reduction, ecosystem services partnership fund, nature culture journey, World Heritage pandemics, etc. We have also conducted a lot of national workshops with almost about 500 participants, again on different aspects, all related to the natural world heritage in some sense or the other, right from conservation management to rights, intangible cultural heritage, as well as community awareness programs. We also have focused a lot on specific training programs, both national and international trainings, specifically with monitoring of the OUVs, open standards practice, management effectiveness framework, use of state-of-the-art technologies like geospatial techniques, as well as World Heritage capacity building for tentative listing, and as well as dossier preparation. As far as the advisory services are considered, we have, we are actively involved also in site inscriptions, tentative list, nominating sites for tentative listing, state party interventions, state of conservation report preparation, and also supporting for periodic reporting and inputs to IUCN World Heritage Outlook. So we do all these things, practically. So all I can say is all our capacity building programs, training programs are very, very strongly rooted in ground. Only what we do, we translate it subsequently to the capacity building programs. And with respect to monitoring and outreach programs, we have all like research and monitoring of OUVs and World Heritage sites. We also ended up hosting the 5th annual meeting of the Category 2 centers, coordination meeting. We regularly celebrate the World Heritage Day, promote the Visiting Fellows program, and have a lot of both national and international collaborations in different arenas. So in the recent years, we have also introduced a master's program in the World Heritage, in the Heritage Conservation and Management, primarily including, taught courses, thematic workshops, and also field modules. We also propose to include a certificate course in heritage management. It is primarily targeted towards professionals, and once the COVID vaccine is kind of more or less available throughout the world, I think we should be in a position to start this. So it would be a short multidisciplinary course for about 45 days and open to everybody. So, and the mode of teaching would be interactive classes, best practice guides, as well as field modules. So with this, a short introduction about what we do, I would specifically request everybody that if you have any issues in answering any of the problems, please remember that we are based in India and we are here to solve all the kinds of problems that you have. In fact, my colleague, Mr. Neeraj Kakati, he has been actively involved with the site managers from India for the periodic reporting, and he will share his experiences after my presentation. And a request to all the site managers that if you have similar kind of issues or any clarification required, you can contact us at any point of time. Over to Neeraj. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gautam, and warm greetings to all the participants, including the World Heritage Center, the National Focal Points, and all other site managers and colleagues. And very briefly, the Wildlife Institute of India has been associated with the periodic reporting, not just now, but even over 10 years ago, very closely along with the World Heritage Center, the Archaeological Survey of India. We conducted training of trainers workshops for countries in the West, Central, and South Asia, sub-regional workshops for the South Asian sites, as well as a national focal point for World Heritage sites in India. We also engaged with the site managers. That was 10 years back. And coming to the current third cycle of periodic reporting in the Asia and Pacific, we have been again in close communication with the World Heritage Center over the last few months. And we have participated, in fact, in all the capacity building sessions of the center, which I must say have been very helpful and very informative as well. We have passed on many of these resources to the site managers. Along with that, we are also guiding and advising, filling up the section 1 of the questionnaire for the national focal point. And we are again closely engaged with the site managers for fulfilling the section 2 of the questionnaire within India. And it is in fact in this regard that the Category 2 Center at the Wildlife Institute, we are available and willing to provide any kind of technical support, as well as conducting any thematic sessions for the natural and mixed sites in the larger Asia Pacific region. So for all the national focal points or site managers, you are please free to contact us directly or even through the World Heritage Center, and we'd be very glad to help you out in this. And of course, we also commit to provide all necessary inputs in the regional report and as well as the action plan that will come over the next 2 years as part of this periodic reporting cycle. To sort of conclude as part of this specific agenda of what has been our experience with the site managers here in India, I would just like to start that in terms of the rationale of capacity building for site managers, clearly the last exercise was done almost about 10 years ago. And because site managers have tenurial positions and they keep are being transferred to different properties, clearly it is an absolute new exercise for almost all site managers. And of course, definitely for most, but I think probably for all. So they require that specific orientation. And here again, it is not just the periodic reporting, but many site managers may also have been given the first posting in a World Heritage site at this point of time. So just a simple orientation regarding World Heritage, as well as the attributes of OUV, may be sometimes very important for them to get a full and basic idea of what is the entire World Heritage concept, because these are mostly protected areas, the natural sites. It is already being managed in that terms, but World Heritage requires that little bit extra additional factors that need to be oriented. And coming to periodic reporting per se, of course, there are a number of technical requirements required. So due to all these reasons, I think it is very important that site managers definitely require certain kind of hand-holding and guidance so that they are able to more effectively complete this questionnaire. Now, there are two broad issues that I think came up over our last few months of engaging with the site managers. So in terms of the procedural issues, so we are all aware that the technological infrastructure across the country in sometimes remote locations are not at the same level. So for many site managers, sometimes they've had issues in terms of accessing the questionnaire. So we have worked to facilitate in terms of the login, the password, as well as getting the link across. And the World Heritage Center has been very prompt in this process, and we have facilitated that with the site managers. Another very valid concern, I might say, is whether, when the site manager fills up a particular page of the questionnaire and he or she saves that page and goes on to the next section, there's a worry that can I come back and change some of my inputs? So if at a particular time much later after filling up, the site manager wants to change it, so after saving it, can he change it again? So we have assured them that this is absolutely possible and you can always change it till its final submission. And in any case, once the site managers complete their entire questionnaire, it is have to be reviewed by the national focal point anyway. So there will always be consultation, and we can always fill in the gaps as well as change any inputs which they think requires certain kind of corrections. Then the third thing is, we are all aware that the questionnaire is reasonably lengthy, I think. And so for many of the site managers, we have noticed that because they are already engaged in so many day-to-day activities of practical management on site, so they are unable to sit with the questionnaire for a reasonable period of time. So usually there's a lot of continuity issues regarding the questionnaire. And so we have sort of helped to guide them in terms of fulfilling this in multiple sessions. But along with the virtual sessions, we think that it is very important, wherever possible, that we should have a more in-person or workshop where all the site managers are physically present. So we have scheduled that shortly, and even while scheduling this and guiding them virtually, what we have been doing is I've been having a regular, in parallel one-on-one sessions also with the site managers, so that we are able to address any outstanding issues that are coming up as they are filling the questionnaire. And one of the other procedural issues is there's been a lot of information that has been prepared by the World Heritage Center, very informative and very exhaustive. What we sometimes feel is, for the level of the site manager, sometimes not all information is fully relevant, or sometimes it may be an information overload. So what we have done is we filter many of the information and we sort of make it more specific to their requirement. And accordingly, we share many of the resources and information so that they are not in a position to waste extra time in terms of a lot of the other information. But as and where new requirements or queries come, we share the information accordingly. So these are some of the procedural issues that have come up over the last few months. And coming to the substantive issues, the specific questions in the questionnaire, there are 3 or 4 of these sections that are particularly very conspicuous in terms of clarifications. One, of course, is simply engaging with the site managers in terms of what exactly this process of periodic reporting is, and what are the basic objectives and what outcomes are we expecting from this reporting. So once they are aware at a larger level in terms of what this entire periodic reporting process is, they are in a much better position to, in fact, attempt the questions, because this process, as I have repeated before, is very new for most of them, if not all. Among the questions is that, I think this is question number 3, identifying the appropriate World Heritage attributes. This has caused a number of queries from our site managers, because while all the sites have their statement of outstanding universal value, identifying the specific limited attributes that are required, 5 to 10 or a maximum of 15 attributes, sometimes requires a little bit of help. So what we have actually done is, over the last couple of years, as the Category 2 Center, we had already undertaken a number of OUV breakdown, analysis workshops with these natural heritage sites. This was based, in fact, on the John Day model that is referred to in the questionnaire itself. So we had already done this breakdown of OUVs. So what we are now in a position to do is we identify, the basic broad about 10 odd attributes, and we are in a position to now share with the site managers, and then they can take a call whether these are the most important and then respond accordingly. So this is what we are doing, and sharing for each individual site, we are sharing that the most attributes that can be extracted from the statement. Then the factors affecting property, again, one of the largest sections of the questionnaire. So here again, the site managers have had a number of questions, because not all the factors are relevant for the individual property. So we've advised them that you need to just, if not all of them are affected, you don't have to comment on each and every of the factors, only which are directly impacting your property. And again, within the factors affecting property, we are all aware that there are at least about 3 dimensions. So whether they are a current or potential impact, whether the source is internal or external, and what is the trend, whether it is decreasing or increasing or the same. So these are the factors that we have specifically tried to explain to the site managers, that we need to take all these things into account and what each of these elements actually imply in terms of while analyzing how does a factor affect a property, whether it is inside or outside, or how it is impacting the property. So that is one important section. And last but not the least is the section on monitoring indicators. So while there have been a number of responses that are there in the questionnaire regarding monitoring, the monitoring system within the management framework, but developing the monitoring indicators for many of the different elements that are mentioned there, so that requires a little bit of additional handholding, and we are continuously engaging with the site managers on these front, and many of the other sort of minor issues have kept coming up, and we have been addressing them by and by. And of course, along with the World Heritage Center, we have been also closely communicating. So these are some of the issues that have arisen, based on our sort of interaction, engagement with the site managers. And I am sure that many of these issues will also be common, in terms of the other countries in Asia Pacific, especially related to natural sites. So I reiterate again, as our faculty in charge mentioned, that we are available and willing to provide any kind of support that is required to the larger, Asia Pacific audience. And I request the national focal points to please, communicate with us if you require any specific, inputs. We are also willing to, in fact, host, if necessary, sub-regional sessions. So we could have separate sessions, say maybe for the South Asian countries, then maybe for the Central and the West Asian countries, the Southeast Asian countries similarly, based on the requirements. And we'll be very glad to help all of you out on this particular matter. So thank you very much. This is what we have to share from our end, and we've tried to be brief, and we would be very glad to answer any questions or any queries that you would have. Thank you. Over to you, the World Heritage Center.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Niraj and Dr. Gautam. That was a very in-depth and interesting presentation. I think especially the section on site managers and how the actual reporting process is working on the ground is very valuable, and I think I may even spend the time to create a separate clip highlighting this specifically. So as I mentioned in chat, we are a little bit over time today, and so if there are any pressing, urgent questions that you want addressed here now with the experts and professionals that we have on call today, please raise your hand or write in the chat as soon as possible, because I know there are many of us who have other commitments and other things to do after this meeting. Therefore, we would like to ensure that you have the opportunities to speak up and ask whatever questions you may have, or and we'll try to address them as quick as possible. So please, if there are any questions, raise your hand, write in chat. We'll give everyone just about a minute to do so, and then if there are no questions, if there are no comments from anyone in the call, I will then pass to Feng Jing from the World Heritage Center to give us closing remarks for our session today, and also our last session of the year 2020. So are there any questions, comments for anyone in the call? I see no hands, and I see nothing in writing. So what I will also do, as always, periodic reporting at unesco.org. This email in the chat will be there for you if you have any questions regarding the questionnaire or the content. As always, the session is shared to everyone after the meeting, and we will be sure to send a follow-up email before at least those of us at the center are on break. So considering there are no other messages and or comments or raised hands, I will pass to Feng to close today's session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. Just a quick question. I noted whether Valentino want to provide some information on the lessons learned relating to natural and mixed site.
Considering he is of course more than welcome to add these lessons learned. Considering today's timing, I think if anything, what we can do, if there are critical things that we have missed, we'll add it to the follow-up email for everyone to view on their own time.
Okay, very good. So yeah, okay. Now as a sort of closing, thank you very much for your attention and active participation in today's session. A special word of thanks to our friends and colleagues, Kati Zeshka from IUCN, Ms. Akane Nakamura of the World Health Center, Dr. Gautam Taludar, and Mr. Neeraja Kakati of WAI for sharing their knowledge with us through this, I think, very comprehensive presentations. Two quick points. I think we noted through the presentation that there is now also the IUCN World Heritage Outlook. I think edition 3 is out. This is really, I think, the overall check on the effectiveness of the protection and management of natural World Heritage sites. Together with the periodic reporting, although this outlook, I think it's IUCN independent view on the status of natural heritage and natural and mixed World Heritage sites. I think it is a useful reference for the periodic reporting exercise in the Asia Pacific region. In the presentation made by Dr. Gautam Taludar, we noted that the training program and also technical support offered by WII for the periodic reporting exercise. I think this is very good. In particular, I noted some of the sort of issues and points regarding the reaction and feedback of site managers. I think this is quite important for us also to plan our, I call it the online training and orientation sessions. The point, for instance, the point he raised already, what and how of periodic reporting, identifying the attributes and understanding factors. These were already covered in the previous orientation sessions. But the developing monitoring indicators, I think we need to integrate into the training schedule. So far for this part of the training and orientation sessions, we have plans up to April 2021. I'm sure all these points raised will be addressed by our team. Our next session will be held in the months from now on 14th of January 2021, and will be dedicated to questions and answers relating to section 1 of the questionnaire. Invitations will be sent out in early January. As holiday season is approaching, I think we all know, a number of World Heritage Center colleagues will be on vacation for the coming few weeks. We'll be back in early January, but if you have any questions or requests, please be sure to send us through email, and we will respond when we are back in office. Another note, I think the training materials, video clips, and the presentations will be available on this Teams platform for the national focal points. You are welcome to share this with the site managers. Some of those video clips you can also to do a replay or use that for other training sessions or national workshops. So lastly, at this special period, please take good care and stay safe. So So on this occasion, I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you all, and see you in 2021. Thank you very much. Oh, bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay, bye-bye.